There is probably no greater compliment you can pay to a preacher than to ask them to re-preach a sermon. A few weeks ago, one of the members of Kamloops United Church sent me an email reminding me that I had preached a sermon entitled "The World Turned Upside Down." I had preached it in the middle of the season of Advent, that period before Easter when we are preparing for the birth of Jesus. She said that the sermon really spoke to her at this time. So I'm going to re-preach for our meditation today part of that sermon. I remember about 10 years ago receiving my first iPad. One of the exciting things I knew you could do with an iPad was that it stores all kinds of books and you just call them up when you want to read them. Imagine being able to carry around a whole library with you. If you want a new book, you type in the title, pay for it, and download it and start reading, all in about 30 seconds. Even better, I found out that a free book came with the iPad. Different books with different iPads. I opened my library, and there it was, my free book, Alice in Wonderland. I wouldn't have chosen Alice in Wonderland, but I began to read. I became absorbed in the story, and I remember from childhood that for me the most exciting yet fearful part of the book was when Alice falls through the rabbit hole into Wonderland. She thinks she has fallen right through the earth and was going to come out where people would be upside down. She calls such a tumbling upside down experience antipathies, though she does wonder whether or not that was the right word. As a child, I was caught up in the story because I wondered if one day that could happen to me. Could I be swallowed up by a rabbit hole and end up in China or Australia? Anne didn't use the right word to describe the experience, but she did portray the way we feel when our world is turned upside down. The ancient Hebrews had a word for this experience, tohu wabohu, utter chaos. It is from this utter chaos, the tohu wabohu, in the moment of creation, that God creates the world, bringing light and order to it. I checked a modern Hebrew dictionary, and it described it as a place which is formless and empty, like a barren desert. Have you ever had an experience when life seems formless and empty? A moment like Alice had, when it seems as if you have tumbled head over heels and your world is turned upside down. A friend told me that when her husband died of cancer, it seemed as if her very life was turned upside down. Or you go to the doctor and find out that a test has revealed something. The phone rings in the middle of the night, and you learn of terrible news. You experience the loss of a job, or the failure to achieve a goal you have been working towards forever. And now we have COVID-19, pandemic, isolation, quarantine. There you were, going along on your merry way, and suddenly it is as if the rug has been pulled out from under you. You feel that you are wandering in the barren, empty desert. The prophet Isaiah, throughout his prophetic works, speaks words of comfort to people whose world has been turned upside down. Many of these writings were for Jews who had been forcibly carried off into exile in Babylon. Comfort ye, my people. We hear the words in Handel's Messiah. This wasn't supposed to happen, and yet it did. Be strong, do not fear. Here is your God, and the ransomed of the Lord shall return, and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Isaiah gives reassurance to a people whose world had been turned upside down. I think that the Bible, the Christian faith, invites us to enter into a world of such reversals. It is a world where the captives are freed, where the hungry are filled, and where the rich are sent away empty-handed. It is certainly a world where things are turned upside down. The Bible seems to paint the picture of an established order with total reversals that could be called antipathies. When we hear the prophet Isaiah, we see our world from God's point of view, and we see that all of these reversals are but signs of transformation. I love the words that Mary, the mother of Jesus, sang when she found out she was going to bear a child. They've come to us as the Magnificat, and they are found in the first chapter of the Gospel of Luke. At a time when Mary is experiencing shocking news, she is able to sing, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the holy. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to his descendants forever." Mary is a different kind of prophet. She doesn't go out into the wilderness like John or stand up in the temple like Isaiah, but she goes to visit her older cousin Elizabeth, who's expecting a child. Elizabeth's husband, Zechariah, the priest, the one who normally would have had a voice on these religious matters, has been silenced by an angel for laughing at God that his elderly wife would bear a child. So in the first turning upside down in the gospel story, the women's voices are clearly heard as they sing. Mary's song comes from deep within her, literally embedded in her DNA. This young girl, inexperienced and sheltered, sings about God's blessings in her life and God's vision of a world made right. Just imagine the vision, the courage Mary had. Her whole world has been turned upside down by this pregnancy, yet she is able to sing such a song. Her song, her very being, challenges the established way of things, reminding us that God can work great miracles in the midst of utter chaos. Mary's song reminds us that the order established in the world is challenged by God. Our good order is not good as long as millions of children end the day hungry or homeless or afraid each night. Our order is not good when we destroy the planet to feed our voracious appetite for the consumption of material goods. I don't need to catalog all the challenges human society faces for us to know we fall short of justice and freedom for all people. We too, here in this place, have, like Mary, been singing our songs which remind us that this world is not what the Creator envisioned, and that God has in mind something else, and that we are called to seek out God's heartbeat for justice, compassion, and transformational love in our own lives, especially during this time of COVID-19, when we go through the experiences of Tahu Wabahu. We have to be open to God's transformational power, and we have a choice whether to be open to change. I have seen people who have been closed to change. I've even met a few of them in the church who are closed to change. But you cannot read the biblical narrative, seek to be a follower of Jesus, if you do not realize that God's way is the way of change, personal, ecclesiastical, and societal. When we close ourselves off to change, our world begins a gradual process of shrinking until, in extreme cases, it caves in upon us. The alternative is to be open to change and God's possibilities. I wondered about my friend whose husband died of cancer. They did everything together. He managed their lives and their finances. I didn't know how she would cope, yet she was a woman of resources. At the age of 67, she decided she was going to learn how to drive. And one day she pulled up on my driveway. It was her first solo drive. She told me she was just going to use the car to drive around the small town. A few months later, I moved to a neighboring town, about 8 miles away. The first week I was in my new home, she pulled up on my driveway. It was her first solo drive on the highway. The next month, she was driving 350 miles to Montreal for her mother's 95th birthday. And years later, she is still driving. She lived Eleanor Roosevelt's famous words, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." This woman opened herself up to the possibilities of her new reality. Quite often, the prophets of the Old Testament resorted to describing things in the world to explain spiritual realities. Listen again to the words from Isaiah. "The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like crocus, it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing." We are promised that even when our souls, the very innermost parts of our being, feel like they are in a parched and dry desert, there is hope. These words of Isaiah, spoken thousands of years ago, are not some historical artifact. They are living words spoken that we might have life and that we might have it in its fullness. And so, until tomorrow, I wish you God's richest blessings